Apparently, I was so distracted trying to come up with a title for the episode that I completely forgot to take off the card that introduced the show. But hey, we're here. Welcome back to another episode of the Pax What She Said podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Maggie Loney, joined as always by Perry Goldstein. It's not going to make any sense if you're listening on Spotify, but if you're watching on YouTube, yeah, that's why we were a couple seconds late. Is because I got so distracted thinking of the title of this episode.
And all our funny titles are always Maggie, so she gets credit for those.
It's the one thing I do with my English degree. But yeah, big one this week. Packers at home finally to take on the Panthers, who are 4-4. You know, feels like kind of an unexpected record for them this season. They're currently 9th in the NFC playoff picture, one behind the Bears, who are sitting at 8th. Buccaneers at 6-2. Feels like weird that it would be an open contest right now for that NFC South, but Panthers ahead of the Falcons. We'll dive into this one, and then we will talk about trade deadline after that. So, Perry, it's weirdly an opponent that they play frequently, right? Last time they played was 2023 on Christmas Eve.
I don't love that. I didn't love that game. That was a bad game.
That was a bad game.
It's a very frustrating game. Here I am thinking about Pookie puns. Pookie leads the Packers against the Panthers.
Did you see his interview with Kay Adams?
Of course I did. He's hilarious. He's such a good sport. Like, also, where did Pookie come from? It's definitely a social media thing.
I thought it was Ronica. I thought she called him that.
She calls him Pookie. I mean, she calls it. She gave us Silly Body, which is like the greatest thing to ever come from like a wag on the Packers. Yeah, who knows? But it's being fully embraced, clearly.
The Elton Jenkins soundbite of him going, "Get up, Pookie," is like my favorite thing ever.
So funny. Anyway, yes, Pookie's playing the Panthers on his birthday.
It's 27, big year.
Yeah, in the lore of the Packers world. If you didn't know, Pookie is Jordan Love, just to be clear. Weirdly common opponent. I mean, NFC, so not that crazy. Panthers are a wonky team this year. They have a better record than you would expect, but they've also beaten some teams that you wouldn't expect and lost to the teams that you would expect. So I know that we have some, quick hitting thoughts on this team. Why don't we maybe start with injuries and then we can go into the matchup itself?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Like we said, we're going to try to cram the trade deadline into this one as well, since that is coming up here next week, less than a week away at this point. But in that blowout loss to the Bills, right, the Panthers were riding the hot hand. They were on a 3-game win streak and then, ran up against Buffalo, lost 40-9. In that loss, they lost 3 of their starting offensive linemen: center Cade Mays, right guard Brady Christensen, and right tackle Taylor Morton. So it's unclear right now if any of them are going to be available on Sunday. All 3 of them did not practice on Wednesday as we're recording this. So not sure what it'll look like later in the week, but certainly not a good sign for that entire right side of the line. Familiar face, Yosh Nijman is their backup right tackle, so he may be getting the call up on Sunday, but yeah, not ideal going up against either Micah Parsons or Rashawn Gary for that right side of the line.
I was going to say, of all the teams that you want to go up against, this Packers pass rush with backup linemen, not the best. We also think at this point it's going to be Bryce Young back under center. Andy Dalton is on the injury report, and Bryce Young is a full participant. So we're going to get a new QB, although the QB you kind of expected to be playing when the season started. So unfortunately for Bryce Young, it does not seem like he's going to have his full protection if he is playing, which is highly unfortunate. So going to need to get the ball out quickly, which I'm not sure is a skill that he has acquired just yet in his short NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, he's day-to-day with the ankle injury and was a full participant on Wednesday. But that said, if he's dealing with an ankle injury, a lot of that mobility and ability to evade pressure, which likely will be in his face quicker than he maybe would have anticipated behind his original offensive line, who was playing pretty well, to start the season. And it doesn't get any better, like we said, with Gary and Parsons, who are fifth and sixth, respectively, in the NFL in total sacks. They're actually, they have the most of any duo right now in the entire NFL. That would be, let me see if I can do quick math, 14, I think, between the two of them. Uh,
Wow.
so, yeah, not a great day at the office for Bryce Young if he's playing. But on the flip side of that, I think that they are going to have to lean heavily on their run game, which has been really successful, right?
Yeah.
Rico Dowdle kind of came in to replace Chuba Hubbard and has not given up the starting job. I think he's what, fifth in the league right now in yards, 605, averaging 75 and a half yards per game, and just has really been doing a great job running the football. I think he's averaging like 5.5 yards a carry or something. So
Wow.
unless the offensive line, really kind of slows things down as far as run blocking, he
Right.
could have a good day.
I was going to say, backup offensive linemen might struggle.
Mhm.
Run blocking, especially against a Packers team who has been excellent against the run. They've given up one game over 100 yards so far and have really been able to stifle some of the better running backs in the league. So I think I'd be hard pressed to assume that Rico Dowdle and a duo of him and Chuba Hubbard is going to be the Packers' Achilles heel. But certainly, if the Panthers want to stay in this game, they're going to need to lean on those two pretty heavily.
Yeah, I mean, there are some like fun faces to watch when it comes to the Panthers. Obviously, their first round pick, Ted McMillan,
Yeah.
he has big play potential to give these corners fits. But, I think we'll carry that conversation on into the trade deadline convo later. But yeah, certainly pieces, of the offense that they need to look out for. But holistically, the offense as a whole has not necessarily been incredible. I think they're averaging like 19 points a game, 23rd on third down offense. Much different when they're running the ball versus passing the ball. They're something like 24th or 25th, I think, in passing game, and then they're like fifth in run game. So,
Wow.
big discrepancy there, which, if Bryce Young has been injured and Andy Dalton did not have a good week. So that certainly didn't help things last week against Buffalo. But any other thoughts on the Panthers offense before we shift here?
Not particularly. I think this should be a team that this Packers defense dominates. I'm not, of the mindset necessarily that they're going to be able to shut them out or anything of that nature. But the way the Panthers offense, they just are very like fits and starts. Is the way that I would describe them. Like they'll have a few nice stretches and then really, really struggle. And I think, Bryce Young is also probably shaking off a little bit of rust coming out of a stretch where he hasn't been playing. So it's an excellent opportunity for the Packers to kind of tee off and really get after them. And certainly I hope a get right game for our cornerback room after their performance in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, agreed. We'll see what kind of help comes in the form of, like safety help. Inside linebackers are playing really well.
Right.
But yeah, flipping the script then, talking about the Panthers defense and what the Packers offense can do to exploit some of those mismatches. I think, the guy you have circled here is Derek Brown, right? He
Yes.
is just a phenomenal interior defender, and the Packers interior, the offensive line has not been playing well. I think you could argue, that Jordan Morgan has played a little bit better, seems to be winning the right guard spot, but still in that rotation with Sean Ryan. And Aaron Banks, I feel like we just haven't gotten a good look at him healthy. He's on the injury report every week, seemingly with something new, right? This week it's a shin injury. So it's just kind of concerning that he's unable to, put his best performance out there because he can't seem to stay healthy. And I know a lot of these guys play injured all year, but tough blow for the interior of the Packers offensive line to be going up against somebody like Derek Brown, who is just an absolute game wrecker.
Yeah. Is he a gamer? Is he where do you put him in the conversation of like can tilt a game in the Panthers' favor single-handedly?
I mean, I don't know about single-handedly, but to be 320 pounds and have 3 sacks already this season, like, he had 2 against the Jets, which, say what you want about the Jets, but like he is generating enough pressure that I think that he's allowing there to be openings for other players. And I don't think like, that he's going to single-handedly like cause the Packers to lose or anything like that. But I do think that, you know, he's somebody that you'd have to look out for, because if Josh Jacobs is having a hard time, getting the ground game going, he could be a large reason as to why.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking more of just like the Packers have, even when they have, I mean, how do I want to say this? Their pass blocking abilities have gotten steadily more consistent
Mm-hmm.
since the line has gotten healthier. I know we just talked about Aaron Banks not being as healthy, but even last week, I thought they did a really good job protecting Jordan just enough against a TJ Watt led pass rush in order for him to get the ball out quickly and, on target and accurately. Jordan Love played out of his mind in Pittsburgh. So, maybe that comes down to earth like a little bit more. I don't anticipate he's going to have 20 completions in a row again. However, I think he's done a really excellent job like working when he has a smaller time to throw this season and leaning into the quick game if it does feel like Derek Brown is starting to kind of take over the game and causing him problems. So I think the Packers have answers for it, I guess, is my overall takeaway.
Yeah, so not to stray too far from the topic at hand, but I do want your thoughts. Obviously, you're a Mina stan, friend of the show, Mina Kimes. Listen to her show every week, and Jordan Love was one of her winners of the week on
Yes,
her show that she does with Dominique Foxworth, and they had a conversation about, first she caveated the whole conversation by saying, she didn't give Joe Flacco flowers for beating up on a not great Steelers secondary, so to kind of take that with a grain of salt when you're evaluating Jordan Love's performance, even though it was still really good.
Mm-hmm.
But they had a conversation about the short yardage plays, right? Like Jordan Love isn't necessarily like slinging it down the field, and it became a conversation about Matt LaFleur's play calling.
Okay.
And I guess, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that they were talking about how Jordan Love is protecting the football really well, but is it because he was more risky in the first couple games of the season, and then they told him to tone it down because he hasn't been turning the ball over at all, but he's also not taking a ton of shots, and maybe it's because now he's got Christian Watson back. Those deep shots will improve, but it seems like he's been playing a lot of short yardage kind of situations.
I have a few thoughts about this, and I'm just going to kind of brain fart them out as they come to me, because my list goes, yes, I think Christian Watson is a huge piece of this. Like, that's a trusted deep threat that we know historically, with like plenty of evidence, opens up the pass game like exponentially. I mean, you can compare games when Christian Watson's on the field versus when he's not, and like what that looks like for Jordan Love. And there's clear trust there. I don't think Jordan throws that crazy drop in the bucket ball to anyone but Christian.
Right.
So there's certainly that. Two is I do think Matthew Golden and him are like right there on connecting on those, and they just haven't. So I'd like to see more opportunities for Matthew Golden in those situations. But so far, when he has thrown the ball, and those don't show up on the stat sheet, obviously, they're just not being able to connect. Two is I think there's also just a lot of take what the defense gives you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I don't know if it's necessarily not in the play call sheet, but if they're playing like really good deep coverage, I think we are seeing Jordan Love learn to just take what's in front of him, and that's in more of that like shorter yardage. I also think that what they talked about in this episode, because I listened to it as well, of course, is that a lot of the players are just getting really great yards after the catch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, it's not, his yardage looks excellent, but it's also when Tucker Kraft goes for 30 extra yards after, a quick, slant across the middle of the field, it kind of inflates numbers, not to like put anything, like take anything away from Jordan Love or how he's playing. It's just, I think I bring that point up just like this is very nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would say I feel like he's not throwing the ball deep. I think there's very like clear key moments in the game where they choose to do that. They just, obviously they don't hit 100% of the time. And I don't know that I want them to do that more if it's not there. So I don't actually have an issue with the play calling per se, especially because Matt LaFleur's bread and butter is like 8 to 12 play drives that take, huge chunks off the clock and then, of course, if they end in touchdowns, like then your time of possession is super lopsided. So we applaud that when that happens. We can't applaud it and then also wish for more deep shots because they don't go hand in hand, I guess, in my head.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to like yeah, like I think Dominique had a point as well that it was like, when you're winning, you look for things to critique and nitpick, right? Like this is obviously working for them in the rhythm of the offense. Like if we were going to critique Matt LaFleur's play calling, it certainly to me
Not that.
wouldn't be right. The depth of the passing game, it would be what we talked about probably ad nauseum on this show is like the runs up the gut on first and second down that put you in those third and longer situations. And then, if those weren't converting, then we'd have a problem with the deep shots, right? We'd be saying,
Right.
why aren't we focusing on some of the intermediate and short yardage situations? But that's a tangent for another day. Too bad we already had the bye week because that would have been a good, good
No,
value.
It's a great question because when you watch a game like the Steelers game, you're like, oh my God, look at this like incredible arm that our quarterback has. Like we need him to use it more. But if he did it more, then defenses would game plan for it more, and then he'd have less open opportunities for them to hit. There's like this like push and pull in my head on these things, and I think they're going for the deep shot like just often enough to keep people on their toes without having it be totally expected all the time.
And I think more of those opportunities will open up as the run game again gets going.
Totally.
Because, that is going to add another dimension that makes this offense less predictable. But before we shift then to talking about the trade deadline, we have to give our score predictions. So let's do that before we dive in.
I think this is going to be another high scoring game for the Packers. They've played excellent at home. Emphasis on excellent. I'm going 31-10. I know we predicted not a blowout last time. I just don't think that the Panthers have the horses necessarily to keep up on offense against the way the Packers defense is playing.
Yeah, I'll say 30-14. Same kind of vein. It's just, again, the Packers are undefeated at home this year. They are putting together some really impressive performances on the offensive side of the ball, not necessarily for a full 4 quarters, but they were about as dominant as you could ask them to be in that second half of the Steelers game. So I think that, of course, continues at home in front of the fans. And I just don't think the Panthers will have the ability to hang with that on offense, especially if the Packers edge rushers get going the way that we would expect them to. So that is the Panthers preview. Let's shift then and talk about the trade deadline because it is coming up. And there are some teams, of course, that are already kind of making moves. Nothing blockbuster. We're not necessarily expecting anything to be blockbuster, but
we had our blockbuster trade already.
Right. We did that before the season started. But talk me through it. What do you think? Packers buyers, sellers, none of the above?
I think the Packers do nothing at the trade deadline. I'm just going to put that out there. I see nothing happening. There's 2 scenarios that I could see. I really cannot see them bringing anybody in. If they did, I think there's one position that they would look for. I could see them being sellers, given that Goot covets his draft picks and they're now missing, a first round pick in each of the next 2 drafts. And I think that if he feels like there's a depth player, that another team, is super high on and would like and needs at this point with injuries. Lots of teams are missing players for the rest of the season, etc. I could see him selling someone. I have a few names in mind, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'd be surprised at this point if they brought anybody in, unless it was a corner. The roster is it's hella complete. They don't need anyone really.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about the sellers first then. Who do you have on the list? Because I would imagine it's, my list is pretty much the same.
I could see like a JJ and Igbare being traded. That's the first one that came to mind. The pass rush is great. He's obviously a rotational player. LVN's going to come back and his snap count is going to get reduced, but he's having an excellent season. So I don't know if they would. I think if someone needed a depth linebacker, I think Isaiah McDuffie is probably on the block as well. On the offensive side of the ball, like I still see, I guess, say Malik Willis like at every turn of this because there are a lot of bad quarterbacks out there and he still proved what he could do last season. I still see, like, every turn of this because there are a lot of bad quarterbacks out there and he still proved what he could do last season. I still see, like, every turn of this because there are a lot of bad quarterbacks out there and he still proved what he could do last season. He still proved what he could do last season. Emmanuel Wilson as their backup. I don't see the Packers trading him, but I could see people being interested. Um, that's my list. That's about it. I'm curious who you have.
Okay, so one of the names, and it's because I saw it in a predictive article, right? There's no like smoke or anything around this name, but Luke Musgrave, which I would have a hard time with because it's a second round pick from Goot. Like
Yeah.
we know that he covets his draft picks, especially some that he's invested, that high of a pick in. But, we've seen the breakout of Tucker Kraft. There are some teams who might be interested in like cheap tight end talent, like, give him like a change of scenery.
Mm,
For some reason, I thought of the Browns because David Njoku is in a contract year and you've got like Harold Fannin, but Kevin Stefanski loves his two tight ends. So, like, there are certain teams that, I guess could be interested if you could like do a pick swap and a player swap for like a depth piece at cornerback. But
interesting.
yeah, he's a name that I actually saw in a trade with the Broncos because they have a ton of depth at corner.
Interesting.
The other name for me was Dontavian Wicks. And I know that he's dealing with injuries, but I think like Malik Heath is in that kind of depth role that, it's such a crowded room, right? Between,
Right.
you're still waiting on Jaden Reed to come back, who seems like he was practicing in a limited capacity this week. So his return could be like coming in the next month or so. Um, and then, of course, you've got Christian Watson, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams, Romeo Dobbs. Like, there's just so many bodies
Mm,
that if anybody wanted to take a flyer on somebody who has a lot of upside that is in like a resource share here with the Packers, right? Like a target share situation where they wanted to give them like an expanded role. He was another name that,
yeah. Those are interesting. Dontavian Wicks actually, I think, makes more sense. Just I am because even before he was hurt, his he was so low, I think, on the opportunity chart. And I say that because I'm ignoring the depth chart. I'm thinking about like who gets like the most opportunities when they're on the field, and but also that to me also diminishes his trade value. Luke Musgrave, I have a harder time with because I think the Packers still really believe in him, and he's been so injured, and tight end can be such a like long, like steep learning curve that I think they could want to give him a little bit more time. And especially to your point, just such a higher draft pick. Anyone on the defensive side of the ball?
um, just I had JJ Nigbari, like same as you. I could also see like kind of like what the Browns and Jaguars did with Greg Newsome and Tyson Campbell if you wanted to like do a change of scenery swap, but there
Mm,
isn't really anybody that like you're not going to give up Nixon, you're not going to give up Valentine. You just paid Hobbs a bunch of money, so I don't see
right.
Hobbs being like dangled as this piece that would be, a change of scenery kind of player. So that was it. The one last player I did want to mention for the Packers as sellers before we shift. Um, Sean Ryan had some comments that I thought were kind of interesting. And I don't necessarily think the Packers would trade him. Maybe in an ideal scenario where their line had been healthy all season, right? But
Mhm.
he's in a contract year. And I don't think anybody asked him like explicitly about the trade deadline, but he kind of alluded to the fact that he doesn't expect to be back next year.
Really?
Just because they have so many bodies and replacements, and if he's still, he didn't say this that I saw, but if he's still in the rotation for a starting job, like if he hasn't won it going into the final year of his deal, he might be looking for a change of scenery and the ability to play elsewhere as one of a teams, because I think he could start for a number of different lines in the NFL. So I have no idea if the Packers would sell somebody who is literally taking starting snaps for them at right guard,
Yeah.
and is their backup center. Like, I don't think it happens given all the injuries on the Packers offensive line, but he was a name that I was kind of intrigued by because he is going into that contract year and he doesn't seem to have confidence in himself that he'll be back.
That's kind of sad to hear that a player saying that so blatantly. Um, I think the only way they do that is if they know for a fact that Jordan Morgan is going to be the starting right guard in his stead. And with the way they're rotating them, I'm not sure they feel confidently about that yet. Um, but that's an interesting one that I wouldn't have thought of. Okay, but I mean, do you think that they're going to do anything? I guess I'll throw the question back at you.
No, but I came up with scenarios in my head that I like would kind of buy into, and like caveat here, full. I don't think the Packers are going to do anything. And if they do, it's going to be like trading a 7th rounder for like somebody
Yeah.
that's basically coming off somebody else's practice squad. Um, but my pie in the sky trade for them, knowing that they already got Micah Parsons, is to go get Joel Bitonio from the Browns. He's like one of the best guards in the entire NFL. The Browns need wide receiver and tight end help, so that kind of aligns with, some of the players that we've already mentioned, but he's in the twilight of his career. He's still one of the best in the business. And if you are in like win now mode to go win a Super Bowl and all you need is like one more piece to shore up your offensive line, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe.
Even though they just paid Aaron Banks.
I
And
know.
yeah, it would be very Packers to go out and trade for a guard when the whole entire fan base is screaming for a cornerback.
Yeah.
That's extremely Packers-y of them.
The other name I had that, I have a lot of corners on the list. I agree with you. Like, I think if there's anybody, it would probably be a corner, and it would probably be somebody who's already a free agent in 2026, like Alontae Taylor from the Saints or Cam Taylor-Britt from the Bengals.
Yeah. Both
But
teams who would definitely be sellers because they're not in contention.
But I also thought about, I don't know what was with the Browns. I think just because their record would indicate that they maybe are looking to be sellers.
Mm,
But Shelby Harris, defensive tackle, like he's 34. So obviously he's not going to be like your starter, but we saw the difference that it made to have Devontae Wyatt in and out of the game. And it's not to discredit like Colby Wooden had a great game next to him. Carl Brooks had a great game like when he returned. But if Devontae Wyatt misses any other amount of time,
right.
having a vet who like he's only playing 41% of snaps for the Browns defense right now. So he's just like he's a rotational piece and he probably costs you like what, a 6th round pick, maybe 7th round pick if you include a player. He's got like $1 million left on his contract. So it's like not expensive to invest. You cut him loose at the end of the season, but like some of those kind of players where they're like veterans at their position, they're in the twilight of their career, like maybe.
Calais Campbell. Just kidding.
So fun.
Love him. How much would he cost? Because when you trade, right, you're taking on the contract.
He's
So
got like a little under 1.5 mil left of his deal.
that's nothing. Yeah.
I think the cornerback market is also interesting because there's a lot of needy teams, right? Like the Lions have DJ Reed now on IR, so like they're probably going to be in the conversation. So as much like the Rams just traded with the Titans, right? So like some of the teams that were looking to be sellers have already sold. So I
Right.
think that kind of limits the pool for a team like the Packers as well. Bills, I think, would probably be interested. So this time of the season where the injuries are piling up, like
Right.
it's probably going to be competitive for a lot of these depth pieces.
Yeah. I mean, good for them, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. We've alluded to it and we've kind of like chit-chatted about it. But I still kind of like not to say I'm not paying attention to this, but I just don't see the Packers like being involved. And I also feel like trade deadlines recently have been kind of quiet. Like the really, there's that first week of free agency is when, things really hit the fan in terms of signing, guys who are available, but also making potential trades. And yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel, you would think it would be busier now because you're midway through the season and guys are like, on IR for the season and, so many teams have lost starters, but also so many teams don't have cap space.
Yep. So is there any other position that you could see as like a wild card? Because I have one singular wild card, but I want to let you go first.
I think that they could get a returner. They obviously didn't like Mecole Hardman for whatever reason. They thought he was worse than what's happening right now. Not sure how that's possible. So if they wanted to go out and get someone for special teams, I would also be all for that.
I don't have a returner on my wild card here, but I do have a special teamer.
Okay.
The Packers lost Nick Nyman, who was the person that they traded for, or they signed right at the beginning of, or right as kind of like roster deadlines were happening to be a core special teamer. He's played exactly 0 snaps on defense, was never going to play defense, was just brought in to be a core special teamer. He is likely out for a while. He hasn't moved to IR yet, but it seems like it's going to happen unless they somehow get like really good news. So my wild card is Nick Bellore from the Commanders. He plays 84% of their special team snaps, has played 7 snaps on defense. He's 36. He's been in the league since, I don't even want to do the math on that. I think like 2012. But they have a really young inside linebacking core in Washington that they were like fighting for a roster spot, and Nick Bellore like won the job to be a core special teamer. He doesn't play defense,
Yeah.
but if you look at who the Packers currently have on special teams, their leaders are Isaiah McDuffie, Tyron Hopper, Chris Brooks, Bo Melton, and Zane Anderson. Those are the guys that have played more than 40% of special team snaps. So if like this guy's been all over the league. He's like a journeyman. He played fullback, I think, for the Lions at one point. Like it's just like a wild career for him. But like a core special teamer is something that I could randomly see if the Packers are concerned about, you know, their like return blocking.
They should be. Cool. We kind of had the same thought there. Just like what's happening in the return game because it needs to be upgraded.
Yeah.
Boy.
I was gonna say the only other like notable things that happened, the Packers have signed 2 players to their practice squad, a corner and a defensive lineman, so kind of in line with what we're talking about. The defensive lineman, Dante Barnett, is from the NFL's International Player Pathway program. He is from England.
Cool.
So that is pretty cool. And then Tyron Herring is a corner that spent most of the offseason with the Packers. Then he was elevated to the Patriots active roster and was waived. So now he's back in Green Bay. I am not surprised that they're looking at a corner, right? Micah Robinson just went to the Titans. But yeah, just don't expect, all that said, all the research, all the homework. I don't think that the Packers are going to do any of it.
I don't think so either.
Which is fine.
That's okay. It's fun to speculate. That is fun to speculate.
But yeah, I think that's going to do it.
Yeah. My last plug is if you live in New York City, please go vote. Our mayoral election is November 4th. Early voting started. I know our audience is probably very few, but if there is anyone out there who hasn't voted yet, please go.
All right. I wondered. I couldn't tell if it was a logo. That makes more sense that it was an I voted sticker.
It's my early voting sticker.
Love a good early vote.
Me too.
Saves you so much time on election day. But that is all the time that we have for today's show. You can find the show on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts, either at PWS's podcast or at Pax What She Said. Perry, I did it right this time. I remembered. Perry at Perry_Goldstein, me at Maggie J. Loney. We will be back probably on Monday to talk about the Panthers game because I'll be at the game. Very excited. Woo. Haven't been to Lambeau in a couple of years and it is long overdue. And very excited to see the throwbacks, which we did not talk about at all, but
they're wearing their throwbacks?
Yep. I'm
fun.
Even more excited for that reason. But yeah, should be a really good game. And hopefully on Monday, we're talking about a Packers victory. But that is it for us. And go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.